How do we combine the essence of the spirituality with the architectural process?
Discuss. Feeling. It's feeling. Mm-hmm. It's that, the instinct, intuition. We can talk about what intuition is. People talk about it as this here kind of collection of past life experiences that are then kind of, become your, the library of experience that you have, that you can kind of touch, but through only the feeling body. There's the mind body, there's the energy body. But when we see, and I'm a yoga practitioner. I've been practicing asana. I've had an asana practice for many years, 12 years seriously. But I started before that. But whenever your mind is balanced, when your body is in balance, right, then your mind will follow. But buildings can impact on that, right? And that's why I talk about kind of, when I come back from traveling, I had an aversion to corners, which is a whole other story, right? But I guess in my practice...
What was your problem with corners?
They were so unnatural. And so I remember I came back and I was sitting there. That's fun. That's an interesting story. But anyway, there's a couple of interesting stories. But I just felt very uncomfortable in a room, with four walls and an orthogonal space, orthogonal being kind of ordered. It felt very unnatural, and I needed to get away from it. And I remember I took off the festival that weekend, slept in a tent and enjoyed music, and just grooved with other energy beings, and I guess like to talk about the idea of bringing the spirit connection to architecture. It's ultimately about understanding that architecture impacts on spirit, on being, on energy being, right? And then as an architect, you need to use your energy being, now this is my opinion, to feel your way through an idea or a proposition or a design that can support those who are occupying that space. And I've reached a point in my practice where buildings should not have a function, a dedicated function. And that's for a number of reasons. Because what you're really doing is harnessing the 5 elements, right? Space, air, fire, water, earth. It's what we're all made of, it's what we're made of, it's what everything is made of. Right? And once you can create an environment that understands and supports the energy, I call it prana, spatial prana. Prana is life force energy. Once you can create an environment that understands and supports that through techniques that are contextual, environmental, but also I employ ancient principles of Vastu Shastra, which is a 6,000-year-old kind of ancient Indian way of thinking about spatial design, that again looks at the 5 elements, and you can divide a plan into space, air, fire, water, earth, and there are principles that when you read the ancient texts, translated Sanskrit texts, they're really fascinating, because first of all it describes the architect and what the architect should be and his or her manner, well back there, his manner, and the friendships that they should have, and it's quite interesting. And then and that teaches you the kind of the rules, and it's all got to do with Vastu Shastra is a sister science to Jyotish, and Jyotish is Eastern astrology, okay, but it's also a sister science to Ayurveda, which is Eastern medicine.
Do these practices lend themselves to your clients, or do they lend themselves to an environment or a building?
It's ultimately for the occupant. Like you're creating.
So your starting point with your 5 elements is always with the client. The client's needs.
No, but it's almost like that practice has become something that I can just feel my way through now. I'm not. Although I do overlay a diagram, or sketch over, thinking about the 5 elements in the water and how, like the northeast is the prayer room, or the room that is the water element. So, if you focus the water in the northeast or in the southeast is the fire element, and subconsciously I'm working on a project at the moment, and it's for a great client in Kingston upon Thames, and it's a new build, and it's demolishing an existing building. But when I look at it now, it's like it's very like the fire element is there in the southeast.
Give me an example when you say, how does that work? So taking your five
elements.
Elements.
So okay, so you can
How does
take,
that work with your client in Kingston?
it just, okay, so I mean, I'm not talking directly with my clients saying, okay, this is, you know, it's almost like at the end of the process, it's like,
It's almost the five elements are an
there.
embodiment of the entire process. They've been considered.
They've been considered, but, you know, so for example, when you're cooking facing east, I mean, these are not, you know, I guess, conditions of this ancient Vastu Shastra, and any Vastu. I mean, there's a Vastu university in India.
Vastu, what's
Vastu Shastra? That is the science. It's the yoga of building, the yoga of place, the yoga of space.
Tell me about the yoga of space.
Well, it understands that the five elements, right? It understands that, as I say, there are conditions. So, for example,
and this, so the yoga of space is the principle around which you design your buildings.
I do. Okay, so I have that knowledge, and that knowledge comes from working with a client to design a temple and monastery back in 2004 on an island in Northern Ireland for a Vedic community, right? So I studied this. I spent years, and that's why whenever I closed my office in 2009 in London, I get a one-way ticket to Delhi to explore these temples that I'd studied, because I'd studied temple architecture. I was designing a temple. I learned about Vastu Shastra. I had read the texts. I had designed the buildings. I was very versed in it, and I wanted to go and explore, you know.
The Western world,
Mm-hmm.
from what I can see, is that the majority of possibly the clients that are available to architects enjoy science and objectivity, fact.
Yeah.
And when we think about feeling, that's
Yeah.
something that is an intangible and
Disagree. I can feel this room. You can feel this room. You know, you can feel any room you're in. You know, you we move through space that we have this aversion to being within. You know, and that's just but if you read those signs, how you move through space, whether it's in the city or, you know, the alleyway or the park, you just slow down moving through a park. You know, if you think about why you're doing that, it's because of what that space, the energy of that space that you're moving through. What I was saying there is about applying that to my work in terms of, and I know you're saying about our existing building stock, and our residential buildings are, I mean, I think they don't understand. I mean, they are of another generation. Most of our building stock, right, across the
how
country.
so in terms of energy?
In terms of, you know, in terms of when it was constructed. Okay, so we have our, you know, terrace buildings, or, you know, of inner city, or, you know, we have our semi-detached kind of suburban living, 1930s, right through the decades of the 20th century. But they were designed for a certain way of living, not for how we occupy space, and that's why I get so many people coming to me. I mean, asking me to help them to rethink their space, like their existing buildings. I'm really interested in existing buildings because most of us live in those buildings that are ill-considered. I mean, most buildings are ill-considered, even by architects. They're ill-considered, right? Because they don't understand it.
So
how far do I go into this?
Wow.
Right?
So you call yourself a spiritual architect.
I
What does that actually
do.
mean?
It's combining the spirit practices with, it's merging all my practices. I mean, I again, another moment in my career when I just thought, well, you know, I'm an architect, but I've got all these practices. Like, I just need to merge these, you know.
Merge what? So you
merge my thinking about
you backpacked through India.
Backpacking. I didn't
You
backpack.
qualified as a
I travelled. Very different. I travelled in rural India. I had to get away from the tourists because I wanted to immerse myself in just in a different culture, like right in the heart of it, and that was an amazing experience to understand how we live in the West, You know, like reflecting, like when you're moving through indigenous culture to another parts of the world. And I used to draw a map on the sand because I was kind of traveling at one point down the west coast of India on my motorbike, and I'd never traveled on a motorbike before on the roads until I was in India. I just had to get away from the tourists, and I ended up doing almost 20,000 kilometres on that motorbike, which is still up there in the Himalayas. But I had a hammock, and I would throw up a hammock in the, you know, on the coast, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by people, and you thought you were way in the middle of nowhere, and it was all rural, and the communication was stifled. You know, most people can speak English in India, but you know, in these rural places, not so much. But I used to draw a map of the world on the sand, right? And Ireland would be huge, of course, and then, like not intentionally, but it just happens that this is where I'm from, then England, and then
your perspective of the world.
Correct. So you move through Europe, and then you move through, and that would happen. That would occur, and then you think. I remember then looking here. Let me just check that, or have a look and see how wrong I really am. You know, and then you start realizing that Europe is just this little place on the planet. Yet we see it as everything, right? And it's all, and it's a created culture. You know, it's not. It doesn't understand. Our culture doesn't understand the elements. Doesn't understand how we should be living on the planet.
The elements: fire,
space, air, fire, water, earth. Is what we're all made of. Is what, and light. You know, we're light. You know, it's, yeah. So that was a real learning, kind of to only when you're out of something can you reflect on it.